Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today for our first Expert Leaders in Medicine, otherwise known as ELM series. My name is Samantha Santana, and I am a community health navigator. It is my pleasure to have you join us in today's presentation, which is brought to you by NYU Langone Health in collaboration with the New York City Department for the Aging and Aging in New York Fund. Today's event is presented by Engagement in Longevity and Medicine Health Community and NYU's Langone Vaccine Center. I would like to introduce to you Dr. Joshua Chodash, who is the Director of Geriatric Medicine and Palliative Care at NYU Langone. Dr. Chodash will be our moderator and will talk to you a little bit more about today's event. Thank you, Dr. Chodash. Dr. Chodash, I think you're on mute.
Oh, my apologies. Thank you, Samantha. So welcome, everybody. This is really a pleasure for me, and we've been looking forward to doing this event for some time now. We think this is, of course, incredibly important, and thank you so much for participating this morning. So in addition to being the Division Director of Geriatrics and Palliative Care at NYU, I also direct a fairly large research collaborative, and one of our very big goals is in giving access to people in the community who want to participate in research. One of the things that we learned very quickly was that, the people in the community have told us over and over again, we want information. We want better access to health information, and we've taken that very seriously. And this is the first in a series of really something that's come out of many of those conversations. What we really hope to do is to provide you with information today, the best information that we have on the vaccines for COVID, but we also want to give you some perspectives, including what are clinical trial research and how is this vaccine being distributed? And our goal is to give you information from our most trusted experts in the field. And what we want to be able to do is answer your questions and concerns. So in the first part of this series, I want to introduce to you Dr. Kelly Minus, who is a family nurse practitioner with 25 years of experience working with underserved populations, and over a decade of experience working with families in the Flatbush community. We're really fortunate to have her. And during the pandemic, Dr. Minus moved into the NYU Langone Vaccine Center site in Brooklyn, a place where this is so greatly needed, to contribute to the ongoing efforts there for progress in the COVID vaccine research. She's one of the leading members of the center, the Vaccine Center's efforts in community engagement, where she provides key health education and addresses questions and concerns from the community and from key stakeholders. Dr. Minus is going to be presenting a brief overview on understanding better what are the COVID-19 vaccines, what are their safety and their side effects. So I'm going to turn this over to you, Dr. Minus.
Good morning, and thanks for having me. So this presentation is designed to address the frequently asked questions about the available COVID-19 vaccines and the safety and side effect profiles of those vaccines. Additionally, I will provide a brief history of the NYU Vaccine Treatment and Evaluation Unit. Next slide. On March 11, the World Health Organization declares a COVID-19 pandemic. And in less than 2 months after the declaration, NYU responded with the NYU Vaccine and Treatment Center and enrolled its first clinical trials. As the slide demonstrates, it has been involved in a number of clinical trials and expanded from Just Tish to Brooklyn, the VA, Long Island, and it has been involved in a number of trials, including the Pfizer vaccine, and continues its research for new and potential vaccines to combat COVID-19. Next slide. How does a vaccine work? Well, a vaccine works by teaching your body to recognize and fight invaders. A vaccine prepares your body to produce fighter cells and proteins that are able to jump into action to block or control the COVID-19 virus. Next slide. Vaccines cannot cause COVID-19. None of the approved or investigational vaccines can give you COVID. None of the products contain whole virus. They cannot cause a COVID infection or cause COVID illness. If you have only a wheel, a handlebar, and a chain, you cannot assemble a bicycle. Similarly, a piece of the COVID virus cannot cause COVID infection. Next slide. Vaccine candidates differ in the message they send your body and how they deliver the messages. mRNA vaccines, like the Pfizer and Moderna candidates, do not alter your DNA. Vector vaccines, such as Johnson & Johnson, have been used to deliver non-COVID vaccines in the past, excuse me. Next slide. How do we get vaccines manufactured so quickly? The process was accelerated. Intense efforts by all sectors were undertaken. Researchers relied on existing clinical trials and vaccine platforms to begin conducting COVID-19 vaccine trials. Manufacturing of the vaccine started while clinical trials are still underway, while normally manufacturing doesn't begin until after completion of all of the trials. Additionally, mRNA vaccines, as the new technology, are quicker to develop and produce than traditional vaccines. And finally, the FDA and the CDC are prioritizing review, authorization, and recommendation of COVID-19 vaccines. It is a shorter process, but no steps have been skipped in the safety evaluation. There is continuous assessment of the potential benefits and risk of all vaccines, and emergency authorization use does not imply that vaccines are not safe. Next slide. Who were the vaccines tested on? The short answer is everybody. It relied on a number of volunteers, were conducted across a cross-section of all adults, and it included people of all races, ethnic groups, both genders, and of all ages. Participants in clinical trials presented with a variety of underlying health conditions, including health conditions that were particularly sought, such as hypertension, diabetes, lung disease, and each of the vaccine trials had a minimum of 30,000 participants. Next slide. Is the vaccine safe for everyone? Vaccines are very safe. They are among the most widely given and studied medications of the 20th century. Several federal agencies continue to monitor the safety of the vaccines, even as they are being administered. For ethical reasons, clinical trials for the COVID-19 vaccine are based solely on healthy adults or those with reasonably controlled, stable health conditions. Once it has been proven safe and effective, more vulnerable populations, such as those under 16 years of age, pregnant women, and people with less stable chronic health conditions, will be studied. But experts think that they will be safe on these people. Clinical research trials cannot be undertaken on pregnant women or those that are breastfeeding, but experts believe that they should be just as safe and effective for these groups as are others similar to flu vaccine and Tdap, which are recommended during pregnancy. And while we do not test on pregnant women, women have become pregnant during the trials, and it is believed that these antibodies that the vaccines produce will confer some positive immunity, or at least temporarily, to the newborn. Next slide. Part of the buy-in to the vaccines are letting people know that they may experience side effects. Side effects means that your immune system is working, it is training and learning to fight COVID. If it were to become infected or exposed. Mild to moderate side effects may be expected following the vaccination. These are signs that the immune system is working, and they differ significantly from a COVID infection. The most common side effects are listed in this slide and are expected to last 1 to 2 days. Severe reactions to COVID-19 vaccines are rare and uncommon, so that people with most types of allergies, including food allergies and pollen allergies, animal dander, are expected to have no reaction to COVID-19 vaccines. People with a history of anaphylaxis should consult their personal provider before receiving a vaccine. And generally speaking, mRNA vaccines have been observed that the side effects are more common in younger populations. Next slide. How do vaccines work? We compare the number of COVID cases in the placebo group versus the vaccinated group. And the graph shows the incidence of cases of COVID-19 are much lower in the vaccinated group than in the placebo group. In clinical trials, researchers measure how well a vaccine prevents illness in a controlled setting. That is called efficacy. Efficacy does not mean that 95% out of every 100 people vaccinated will be protected from COVID-19. It means that the vaccine reduces the amount of disease by 95% of all vaccinated people compared to people who have not gotten vaccinated. But all of the vaccine candidates are effective in preventing severe infection, hospitalization, and death. Next slide. The vaccines are not 100% effective in preventing COVID infection. You may still get COVID infection post-vaccination, but the course of that infection is likely to be milder and not require hospitalization. Next slide. That being said, what we do know is that you're protected against severe disease and hospitalization, but it is not yet known if any of these vaccines prevent asymptomatic infection, nor is it known if vaccinated people can transmit the virus if they do become affected, but do not have symptoms. Even post-vaccination, we must all continue to do our part. Wear a mask, wash our hands, and maintain physical distance. Clinical research is ongoing about the vaccine's ability to prevent transmission. Next slide. Research remains ongoing, and there are many things about the coronavirus. We still do not know how long vaccines provide protection, if booster shots will be needed in the future, and as previously mentioned, the ongoing studies on children, pregnant women, and the medically fragile. So masks are not going away anytime soon. We still need to stop the spread of coronavirus. Next slide. A common question we get is, do I need a vaccine if I've had COVID or if I've had antibodies? The short answer is yes. You should be vaccinated regardless of whether you already have had COVID-19. That's because experts do not yet know how long you are protected from getting sick again. After recovering from COVID-19, even if you have already recovered, it is possible, although rare, that you could be infected again. Vaccination is a stronger and longer immunity than natural infection. This is because vaccination is scientifically studied to create effective response, as opposed to any response. A lot of the antibodies created by natural infection are ineffective with a smaller proportion of that kills the virus. This makes it more likely to get a repeat infection after a natural disease. Next slide. We hear a lot about variants and mutations and their efficacy with the current approved vaccines. Mutations emerge in a virus in its attempt to evade the immune system. Vaccines help to reduce new variants by killing and neutralizing the virus before it has a chance to replicate. Early and effective vaccination reduces variant transmissions. Preliminary studies suggest that the vaccines authorized will provide protection against emerging strains with varying levels of efficacy. Science is working to learn more about these variants and how they affect vaccines. But again, the vaccines appear to prevent the most severe courses of COVID infection. Next slide. Why are we continuing COVID research, even though we have available vaccines? Well, there are over 7 billion people in the world COVID-19 is affecting, and vaccines are needed to end the pandemic. Now that we have vaccines that have proven to be effective at preventing severe COVID-19, why do we need to continue vaccine research? There are 3 main reasons. 1, if we can find several vaccines that work, we can end the pandemic sooner. If we find several vaccines that work by various companies, we can make more vaccines in a shorter amount of time. But if several companies have successful products, they will be able to work together to make enough doses to cover the entire world. 2, in addition to meeting demand, we need vaccines that can work for many kinds of people around the world. Vaccines may work differently depending on someone's age or health status. One vaccine regimen might not work well enough for all groups. We need to make certain that all vaccines work for the communities that are hardest hit by COVID-19. Racial and ethnic minorities, older adults older than 65, and people with pre-existing medical conditions. And thirdly, we need more data over longer periods of time. Right now, we know that EUA vaccines are very effective at preventing severe COVID-19 disease. However, we still need more data over longer periods of time to know if the vaccines can prevent infection with SARS-CoV-2 in the first place, and how long a time period the vaccine helps the immune system to fight against the virus. The bottom line is we need to continue with randomized blinded controlled trials to get these answers. Next slide. Feel free to contact us if you're interested in participating in clinical trials. Some that are in the works are studies on transmission in younger adults, post-vaccination, vaccine safety in pregnant and nursing women, and single-dose Johnson & Johnson booster shots post-Pfizer vaccine completion to assess variant and protection. Thank you for your time. And see, Sensor, thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Midas, for a really great overview. I guess my video has to start. I learned something, and I think this is so important, and I hope that folks that were on this were able to hear you clearly, and I think there'll be some opportunities for additional information in both during this event and the days that come. And I hope that Samantha can also send out folks and make it easy for them to contact you or the vaccine center if they're interested in participating. You know, this is such an important overview for on COVID-19 vaccines, and we so appreciate your expertise and that of the vaccine center. This is making a huge difference in our lives every day. So we really appreciate you being with us here today. I think, you know, in addition to hearing from you, Dr. Midas, I think it's really important that we also we hear directly from those who have participated in the vaccine trials that you so well described a few minutes ago. You know, as Dr. Midas mentioned, the center, the vaccine center at NYU took part in the very beginning trials of the Pfizer COVID vaccine. That's what is otherwise known as a phase 1 trial. Those are your first time that you try to make sure that when you do this, it's safe and there aren't any problems. And that was back in May of 2020, which feels almost like a lifetime ago, even though it was almost just yesterday. At this point, we want to share with you a video from one of the participants, Frances Nanton Gonzalez, who agreed to share her experience. And I think just before we start that, I just wanted to say, I think it's really important for us to talk to other people who have been vaccinated and to understand what their experience is like. And I think that's very helpful in enabling us to feel more confident in moving forward with this really important strategy and this very, very effective therapy. So I think we're gonna show the video now, if I'm not mistaken.
Hi, my name is Frances Nanton Gonzalez. I am a participant of the phase 1 trial for the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine, and they wanted me to speak a little about my experience. Now, I am a nurse, have been a nurse for a long time, so I kind of know about clinical trials, although I've never participated in one. I know that all the pharmaceuticals that I've used through my career somehow went through an approval process with trying out on people before the FDA approved it for general distribution and use. Okay. Last year, when the pandemic was at its worst and they were asking nurses, retired nurses also to go back to work, I did not. For a couple of reasons. One, where my hand was broken at the time, but also afraid of getting sick and dying like so many was around us. When they called me to ask me to participate in the vaccine trial, I thought I was a little old, and they said no, they were asking 65 and older, so I fell into that category. I figured it was safe because I'm a pretty trusting person, and they had tried it out on a lot of younger people before they got to me. My kids thought I was a little crazy. My friends thought I was a little crazy. My son thought actually I was being used as a guinea pig. My daughter's like, are you that bored with retirement? But I went through it and it turned out surprisingly well. I mean, I had thought this would take years to actually finish, and less than 6 months down the road, I get told that the Pfizer vaccine actually works. So that's a plus for me, although I did not know whether I got the real vaccine or not. When I was unblinded and found out that I actually had the real vaccine way back in June, I felt kind of special. And all my friends who were talking about trying to get the vaccine, it's like, I'm thinking they were a little jealous, the same friends who thought I was crazy for doing it. And as a matter of fact, a friend of mine called me up to tell me that he got his vaccine and that maybe I should be getting a booster since mine was so long ago. And the very next day, someone from the vaccine program called me up and said they were offering phase 1 participants a booster. So I even got that. So I think I'm pretty much way ahead of the game. I don't know what else to say. I'm glad I participated, and you know, if I can find other things to participate in, that would be a good thing, I'm thinking. Okay.
Okay. I hope that all of you enjoyed that video as much as I did. Wow. Really big thank you to Frances for not only sharing her experience, but also really for, you know, your bravery and courage in being what I would call a vaccine ambassador and a clinical trial participant. We are truly grateful to you. And without your participation and folks like you in clinical trials, we wouldn't be here, where we are today without actually helping to end this pandemic. So this is such important contributions. I really can't overemphasize that. And we can all play a part in advancing science and research to find vaccines that will help improve human health. So moving right along from where we are today, there are now three, as you've probably heard, three emergency use FDA approved or authorized COVID-19 vaccines that are available in the United States. Really, thanks in part to participants like Francis. And now that these vaccines have been developed and they've been really thoroughly tested, it's very important to address how New Yorkers can better access these vaccines. I'm sure you've heard lots on the news about whether people were able to or not able to, and how hard it was for some people who have gotten the vaccine already to get it. Though I hope that that's getting easier. So I'd now like to introduce you to Benjamin Strong, who's been the Senior Director of Emergency Preparedness and Response at the New York City Department for the Aging since 2019, and he oversees strategic planning, preparedness, and response operations during emergency events, and he's the department's primary liaison to New York City's emergency management. Ben previously served as a Director of Logistics at the New York City Emergency Management and is a veteran of the U.S. Coast Guard. Ben will be talking more about the initiatives at the New York City Department for the Aging, and at the end of this, maybe I'll have a chance to tell you a little bit more about our collaborations. And he's which is working towards greater access. The Department for the Aging is doing a lot of work towards greater access to the COVID vaccine. So let me turn this over to you, Ben. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Doctor. Very much appreciate the introduction. I gotta go ahead and share my screen, so I'll bring up PowerPoint. Yeah, hopefully everyone can see this. So again, I'm Benjamin Strong, Senior Director of Emergency Preparedness and Response for the Department for the Aging. And I'm going to talk about our collaboration with the New York City Vaccine Command Center, which has been the primary organization in New York City as far as coordinating governmental efforts to get the vaccine out to the public. And so a little bit of background on the Vaccine Command Center. This is a dedicated interagency effort created by the Mayor's Office to coordinate vaccine distribution throughout the city. This has a number of key members, including Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, Health and Hospitals Corporation, the Task Force on Racial Equity and Inclusion, as well as New York City Emergency Management. And a little bit of background on the New York City Department for the Aging. Department for the Aging, its mission is to eliminate ageism and ensure dignity and quality of life of diverse older adults in the city. Department for the Aging, otherwise known as DFTA, operates a number of social and community services by partnering with a broad network of contracted community-based organizations. This includes very well-known senior centers, nationally recurring retirement centers, home care, case management, caregivers, home delivered meals, social adult daycare centers, among others. We also provide direct services such as health insurance assistance, elder abuse, and senior employment. So DFTA's clients, older adults, and DFTA primarily focuses on older adults who are 60 and above, are among the most vulnerable to COVID-19. We have approximately, within our network, 250,000 clients. I'll speak to the collaboration we've had with the Vaccine Command Center, which has been critical to the effort really to reach out to older adults in the city and let them know about access to the vaccine, and of course encourage those who are willing to receive the vaccine. So we've collaborated with the Vaccine Command Center to distribute vaccines to older adults through a number of initiatives. Initially, this began with calls to clients and continues. Calls to clients to assist them in scheduling a vaccine, as well as accessing free transportation to those sites that are dispensing the vaccine. More specifically, in getting more into the detail of how we're doing specific outreach to older adults, we've participated in a number of initiatives with the Vaccine Command Center. First of which being the community-based organization, CBO, outreach for the Task Force for Racial Inclusion and Equity, otherwise known as the TREE Initiative. And this is really to have our provider network reach out to those clients who reside in neighborhoods identified by the Task Force for Racial Inclusion and Equity, which are, for the most part, communities of color, also hit hard by COVID. And so we've asked the provider network to reach out to those clients who reside in those communities. We've been able to directly schedule them for appointments at New York City operated vaccine hubs in their neighborhood or near them. We've also engaged with an effort to reach out to homebound older adults. This first started with identifying those clients, particularly within our network, that were homebound, fully homebound, which we identified several thousand of. And then we had a provider network reach out to those clients to schedule, to first screen them to determine whether or not they could get access to the vaccine, and then schedule them for appointments. And then we've had another initiative with our naturally occurring retirement center communities, otherwise known as NORCs, again, where we've established temporary vaccine hubs at those locations for those who reside in the NORC to go down to the NORC center and then receive the vaccine. And then we have a number of senior centers within NYCHA developments that are serving as points of distribution, otherwise known as pods, for those older adults to receive the vaccine in those communities. So we'll talk about the calls generally to clients, and this is essentially how we first started off, and this is calls to inform clients of the vaccine finder as well as a hotline. So we've not only conducted in-person calls, we've also conducted robocalls to clients in multiple languages. So we conducted robocalls to inform clients of their ability to access NYC vaccine finder as well as a hotline when eligibility was determined by New York State. We've also had providers, we've asked providers to conduct calls to their clients specifically to identify those who may not have had the ability to access the vaccine, and then walk them through the process, really. So not only to inform them of the vaccine finder and the hotline, but also to help them schedule an appointment, kind of a one-on-one help scenario. And then if those clients need transportation to a vaccine hub, and we assist them with that as well. And this transportation services provided through the Vaccine Command Center, which include not only TLC, otherwise known as CURB, transportation providers, but also ambulette providers as well for those who have trouble getting around. So I'll talk on the TREE CBO initiative. So the Vaccine Command Center is operating several points of distribution for vaccines in neighborhoods in these specific zip codes and areas where it's been a challenge for folks to either get the vaccine, they've had high COVID rates, and they may not have been able to access otherwise. So we've engaged our providers to contact clients who live in these neighborhoods and then determine whether or not they're eligible, and if they're interested, and if so, schedule them at vaccine hubs in those areas. We've had a number of, and the number is always changing, different contract community-based organizations that have helped participate in this initiative, and it's been so far quite successful. We're one of the agencies participating in this initiative, I should say. There's a number of other agencies but with the help of our providers, it's been quite an outstanding initiative. So outreach for in-home vaccines for homebound adults, very critical, is reaching out to those older adults who are homebound, otherwise cannot leave their place of residence for a variety of different reasons. And so we've had a number of providers who historically have dealt directly with homebound clients, primarily case managements, caregiver providers, as well as home care providers. They've helped to identify those homebound clients and then screen them as to whether or not they could receive the vaccine. The eligible clients are then contacted by FDNY through the Vaccine Command Center, and the FDNY will send a team of folks to that place of residence and administer the vaccine. So it's not only for the homebound older adult, that vaccine could also be administered to folks residing in that apartment if they are eligible. And then the Nyack Initiative, which we've partnered with health and hospitals on, we've identified a number of critical NORCs which have agreed to serve as points of distribution, essentially a temporary vaccine hub that would operate for a 3-day period, and then depending on the vaccine that was administered, may operate 3 weeks to a month following that to administer the second dose. And for the most part, this would capture about 50 clients per day over a 3-day period. So approximately 150 clients for that event. This is a collaborative effort between DFTA, Health and Hospitals, Vaccine Command Center, and Test and Trace, which is a component of Health and Hospitals. And then we had we have a number of senior centers at New York City Housing Authority facilities that are operating as temporary points of distribution sites, sometimes for longer periods of time, and they'll serve the community at those specific locations that are identified not only by the city but also by New York State. So there's constantly new initiatives coming out, and it's really primarily focused on giving access to older adults who may have had a challenge with either going to the location to receive a vaccine or scheduling the location. So we're constantly looking in collaboration with the Vaccine Command Center to engage more providers, engage different strategies on how to get access to those older adults who have not yet received the vaccine. We've included informational pamphlets to our home delivered meal clients, and we're also engaging in a number of other strategies to reach out to this critical population. And here's some resources. New York City Vaccine Finder, which we've included in our calls, the vaccine finder information, as well as a hotline. Again, these are calls that our provider network makes directly to the clients, and then in some occasions walks the client through the scheduling process. And Agent Connects, which is also another referral for those who are unable to have challenges with signing up for a vaccine through the New York City Vaccine Finder or the hotline. We often suggest referring them to their provider or local senior center in their neighborhood. They continue to have difficulties. Very much have to have them call Agent Connect as well, which will connect them with an individual who can also help them walk through the scheduling process to receive a vaccine. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, so much, Ben, for all that you're doing at the Department for the Aging, and in particular to increase access to these so greatly needed vaccines for our older New Yorkers. We really appreciate your time and response during this really incredible pandemic that we're all in the midst of still. We hope that this first series was helpful in providing all of you with information and facts about the COVID-19 vaccines directly from some of the best experts in the field. And I will say a little bit more about ELM in a few minutes, but before we move on to wrapping up to today's event, I did want to give the opportunity to ask both Dr. Minus and Ben a question and some final food for thought. So, Dr. Minus, what would you advise someone who's still unsure about getting the COVID-19 vaccine?
I would advise them to seek the most current information available, to look on the CDC website to guarantee that it's the most up to date, but also COVID infection is not going to wait for you to make a decision. In the interim, you may still get infected with COVID, have less protection against severe COVID infection, including hospitalization and death.
Thank you. Ben, how would you advise our older New Yorkers who are trying to get access to the COVID-19 vaccines?
So I think to perhaps about a month or two ago, how challenging it was on a lot of the state and the city finders sometimes to schedule an appointment because of the availability. I think that's changed a bit since then based on the increasing supply to New York City, which has been wonderful. So I think in the past I had advised persistence, which was, of course, a product of the supply. But I think now that we have more supply, I very much encourage them to go to the New York City Vaccine Finder, go to the hotline. If you're having trouble with that, reach out to friends and family who can help assist you navigate those resources, or reach out to a community-based organization. And if needed, please reach out to New York City Department for the Aging's Aging Connect, which I provided on the resource slide earlier, and I can certainly provide to the group now if needed.
Thanks very much, Ben. I really want to thank our community partners who have joined us today. And before we sign off, I want to say just a couple of words about ELM. You saw today and you heard from Dr. Minus and others, and you saw that video, somebody who was participating in a clinical trial which has made this possible, made this so important therapy available to everyone. And it's relatively rare, actually, that a lot of the medicines that we take and a lot of the things that we do in healthcare are best informed from having people like the individual that you saw participate in those kinds of clinical trials. And so ELM was created as part of an effort from the National Institute of Aging, as part of NIH, our largest research infrastructure in the country, to address this fact that we don't have enough people who are older, and particularly people who come from those groups that are just not represented in studies, and particularly minority populations, and with respect to COVID and other health conditions who are so significantly affected by this and other problems. And so this came together to help improve participation, to increase access. And as I said earlier, one of the things that we discovered very quickly, which we really knew all along, but we needed to hear it again, was that what people really wanted was better health information. And here we are sitting at NYU with lots of resources and health information. And so my goal, and others that work with me, has been to get this information out into the community. So to do that best, we've collaborated with the Aging New York Fund and with the Department for the Aging. And this event today is actually the first expression of that direct, maybe not the first, but the first public expression of that direct collaboration in the community. And ELM also provides training for people who are community health navigators who want to participate in increasing the opportunity for people to participate in clinical trials. So I'm really thrilled that for those of you who are able to be on today, this event has been recorded, so I think it'll be available after today to those who are not able to attend. And at this point, I want to turn it over to Samantha, who you met earlier and who will tell us a little bit more about all of this. And so take it away, Samantha.
Thank you, Dr. Chadash. Before we move on, there's actually an audience question, Dr. Minus. The question is, does it mean anything if someone does or does not have reaction to the vaccine?
It means something, but it does not mean that you're not mounting a response. The SARS-CoV-2 virus is new, but SARS viruses are not new. So that older people may have come in contact with a SARS virus before, and your body has a different way of responding to it, as well as people who have traveled extensively or who were born in other countries have been exposed to other SARS viruses, and the body already has some rudimentary form of reacting to the vaccine.
Thank you, Dr. Minus. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. And we wanted to share some resources where you can learn more about how to be part of the ELM health community that Dr. Chodash shared about and stay up to date with the latest information on health and aging and health. By signing up to the ELM registry, you will have access to health information about various age-related conditions and the opportunity to learn more about research and participate in a research study. You can sign up for the registry without having to participate in research. If you're learning more about the registry or signing up, my email is ssantana@aging.nyc.gov, and this will be in the Zoom chat. Thank you again to everyone who joined us today, including Drs. Chodash and Minus and Benjamin Strong. We appreciate everyone's time today and look forward to seeing you again in the future Expert Leaders in Medicine discussion.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.